So without further ado, can we all give a round of applause as we award 2022 Man of the Year, Doug Ruffin Jr. Say a few words.
Certainly. Good evening, Buffalo, New York. I'd like to first give honor to thank Umoja Incorporated for the honor of this award. Also, I'd like to give honor to the family and the memory of Brother William Peoples. I can remember his establishment, the Bus Stop Deli, which was, I grew up in the neighborhood where his establishment was. I lived a few streets down over on, in the East Ferry area, lived on Northumberland, between East Ferry and Skajackwada. His was among a number of Black-owned corner stores that were in our community. There was his store, the Bus Stop Deli. There was Mr. Thomas Reed's store. There was Jim's Deli, which was at the corner of my street, Northumberland. And of course, last but certainly not least, Betty Jean Grant and Grant's Variety Store was also still there, still in my old neighborhood. I try to stop by anytime I'm in town. We used to go to, when I was a kid, we used to go to the different stores for different pieces of candy. So that's my biggest memory of that. As I was thinking about, I was on vacation and thinking about what I would say in my acceptance speech. And I was thinking back to many of the interviews that I've done, and I've always talked about the same things over and over again. I've talked about the documentaries and being on the radio. And I figured everybody pretty much knows about that at this point. I want to talk about something and share something that, a part of my career that I've really not made any mention of, but I want to give it some acknowledgement because it provided the road to where we are tonight. And I want to acknowledge the early part of my career. And that's, as well as how it paved the road for not just where we're at tonight, but how I progressed through it. I spent 28 years working professionally in the Buffalo media, not just in the Black media, but within the mainstream local media as well, through many of the outlets. Channel 7, Channel 17 PBS, WIVB Channel 4, Empire Sports Network, which was my first full-time job, YNN Buffalo, you know it today as Spectrum News, WNYO WUTV Channel 29. On the radio side, I cracked the mic, yes, at the two Black heritage stations, 93.7 WBLK and 1080 AM WUFO. You know it today as Power 96.5 FM. And as a sidebar, because I've heard a lot of this over the years and it's always surprised me, my career did not begin in radio. It actually began in television. Now, on the independent side, I worked for public access. I contracted with the Buffalo Board of Education, as well as the Western New York AmeriCorps program. I ran my own production companies, Urban Legacy Filmworks in 2007, and before that, Jet Set Entertainment in the 1990s. I've produced documentaries, commercials, television, and radio shows. I've hosted many events, and in present day, I created a social media platform by now, I'm sure you all know, as the Buffalo History Channel. My career in media started in April of 1994. My initial intent was to have a career in commercial production and television programming. I wanted to be the one to kind of make the decisions on what would go over the airwaves. Overall, that never exactly happened, yet I can certainly say that I certainly paid my dues in the industry. And on that side of it, my entry certainly did not come easy. Starting out after coming home from college, what I first had to do was make a pest out of myself by constantly calling those TV stations on the phone, asking if they had any openings. That went on for months before I would finally get my foot in the door in the spring of 1994. And from there, I would go from outlet to outlet seeking new opportunities and growth. The landscape of the Buffalo media at that time was much different from where it stands today. Not only were opportunities few and far between, they were not, I can remember they were not very welcoming to young people fresh off the college graduation line, or as some of them called it, the puppy mill. I can remember being told that I won't last long in this business. The part-time jobs that I had, I was told that there was no hope of me ever going full-time. And also, I can distinctly remember being told I should have done a double major in college. On the black hand side, you were hard-pressed to see any of us in any great numbers. There were maybe at best 3 to 4 of us, but we were in different departments, on different floors, and hardly came into contact with one another. And in my case, during those years, it didn't leave a lot of room for me to really be mentored or be taken under anyone's wing. Those waters I had to navigate on my own. And in a few cases, I can remember I was the only black, not just in a department. In one employer, I was the only black in the building. And in addition to that, learning to function in those work environments as a young black professional in the 1990s, in the midst of the then current events of that time, the O.J. Simpson trial and the Million Man March, it was truly a test of one's will. And I have to give honor to my dad and as he used to run the Clarkson Center for Human Services for those job survival skills classes that he made me sit through. They definitely came in handy because I was young and in my 20s and pretty well into my pro-blackness back then. But I also realized that I had to play the game if I was trying to get ahead in my career. So I kind of had to do a balancing act, which was not always easy, but I got through it by the grace of God. Also, this was a time that predated the internet and social media. You know, today, you're just thinking in terms of today, the ability to just create your own platforms back then was not the easiest thing to do. We had public access, but Brother Kamal will let you know, you had to put in some work because resources were severely limited. There was a time when all these cameras, there was a time you couldn't even come and get within 5 feet of a camera. And a lot of that stuff would almost, even edit video in your house that stuff would cost more than your house back in them days. So things were not always as accessible. Now, that part of it, I'm going to get off of it and leave it right there. And I want to go into the other part of my career because I want to just give you, I don't want to be long, but I'm going to give you some snapshots and some broad strokes of the road that I traveled throughout my almost 30-year career. As I came up in the industry and I learned to shoot and edit video, and what's most important to getting ahead in this business is learning how to write. It enhanced my flair for creativity. You know, as a people throughout the 1990s, if you remember, we were really into the positive promotion and programming of black images. And I wanted to look for ways in which I could coin that. You know, I consumed a lot of television growing up as well as in that day. And it led me to become involved with the public access station. And I had previously come through public access when I was in high school under the auspices of Sonship Communications, BPAC, the Buffalo Public Access Center, 1420 Main Street. I also hung out at that time with the people from the Buffalo Beat program that was at Channel 7. And, you know, both entities were very active in the community. They were filming various events from the Juneteenth festivals to the Randy Smith basketball tournaments, the various rites of passage programs that used to take place and still take place, as well as the all-high football games and basketball games. As I said, I watched a lot of TV back in that day. In particular, this was also during the Cosby era, the Different World era. Black movies and black directors were starting to come into play. And there was also black TV dramas. And it was also a huge focus on black history. And that really, black history became my primary focus. I produced a television show focusing on the history of the Black Panther Party in November of 1994. After that aired, my father and a friend of his, the late John E. Smith from the Buffalo Black Media Coalition, yes, suggested to me that I should do a project on the history of the BUILD organization. That is how the idea for the BUILD documentary series came about. After I did that BUILD film series in 1997, there were so many different things that began to take place as we moved into the next millennium. From the advent of local Black filmmaking, which our Buffalo is now giving way to an entire film industry now. To a greater expanded interest in telling Buffalo's Black history in so many different forms on so many different levels over the years. I'm not going to sit here and claim that it all started with me, because there were many that came before me. Sonship Communications, the late Dr. Monroe Fordham, Dr. Eva Doyle, and a very good friend of mine, my brother in historical documentation and preservation, Brother Kevin Cottrell. The dearest thing to me throughout my career has been storytelling and telling the story of my community. The Buffalo History Channel affords me the opportunity to do that. The advent of social media platforms enables me now to expand on that in ways that I never thought I would have the chance to do before. So throughout the efforts of that Buffalo History Channel and telling the stories of the Black Dance Workshop, of Ambrose Lane, of Model Cities, Scotty's Steakhouse, John Young's Mumbo Wings, Figmo's, and so many more that can be seen on that platform today, all at one's fingertips, anytime they want. The Buffalo History Channel, I can say here, at almost 30 years in the game, has been one of the greatest efforts of my career. And as I now land the plane on this acceptance speech in commemoration of my 28th year in the years that I have worked to get to this point and the work that continues, I am honored and humbled to receive this Man of the Year award from Umoja Incorporated in Buffalo, New York. Thank you, and God bless.
Can we have all the previous award winners come up here so we can put them together?
Let's do it over here in this corner. Yeah, in this corner.